To your seats. Representative Vandewey is on his way, but is delayed, and so we may not see him for another hour, but we do expect him. I know that between the weather and some of you coming from clear across the state, that travel today was unusually challenging for this board meeting, so I particularly appreciate your efforts this morning. Briefly, just by quick way of introduction before we get going, I've been meeting with all of you about your expectations, and your primary expectation is for us to help you responsibly govern the plan. This, your strategic plan, is your best way of expressing to us how we can do that. What you can do to achieve that goal, what we can do to help you achieve that goal. And so that's sort of the context for today's discussion. You all know Tom Nugent. He's worked with you before. Those of you, all of you guys have been on the board. You met Wally. So this shouldn't be too different from what you've gone through, but I really appreciate the energy and passion that you put into this in the past, and I hope as we go through today you'll see how much your efforts in past sessions like this have paid off. With that, I'll turn it over to Tom.
All right, thanks, Steve.
You can lead.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So the core of today's session is two work sessions where the board is being asked to address four important issues facing the organization today. Each of these sessions are going to be 90 minutes in length. The first 40 minutes of allotted time is to kind of discuss the issue amongst yourself, come up with your thoughts and recommendations, and then write them on an easel so you can share with the group. Then there'll be two 25-minute segments where each group will share their thoughts and hopefully come out of that with recommendations on what you want the staff to do next and what you want the board to do next as it relates to each of those issues. So preceding starting of the work sessions, Tim is going to give a brief overview, background of the strategic planning process to date and accomplishments to date to kind of put things in context. And then we'll do the work sessions. But before that, I handed each of you a note card, and I want to ask you about that. And I also wanted to review the 2014 results as it relates to how well your expectations are being met by staff to be a satisfied board. But let's start with the note card. I gave it, the quote here is, "The culture of an organization is a reflection of the behaviors of the leaders." That's a quote from the book Execution by Larry Bossidy, who was CEO of Allied Signal. He had thousands of leaders. And I guess as a business coach for the last 22, 23 years, I have really seen that. As soon as I go to an organization, I look at the leadership and, however the behaviors are, it's a reflection of behaviors. The leaders change, the organization, the culture change. So the question I asked each of you to think about is, what is the most important behavior you would like to see board members model? So some of you have had a little more time to think about it than others, so let me ask those to start first. Maybe Kelly.
Okay. As I thought about this, the first thing I thought, the behaviors I believe to be most important are cooperation and collaboration.
And so, cooperation, what's the difference between those two?
I think collaboration is the process of bringing yourselves to, and cooperation is participating in it. So the collaboration, I think, is a thoughtful process of discussion, debate, answering the question, why. That's how I see it. I may be out.
Right.
That's
That's good. So one is engaging, and the other is actually, give and take, kind of, making decisions. Yeah.
I don't know if cooperation is an order type. That's not the way I perceive it. But
okay, great. Thank you. Who else has had a little longer to think about it? Jack has.
I guess mine would be just total honesty at the board level and also with the members.
Total honesty.
Sometimes it's brutal.
Yeah. And how? What prevents total honesty?
Personality.
A lot of it's personality.
Confrontation.
Yeah. And so I find it so much. Your comment was, let's state what really is a behavior that people would like to see. And total honesty is an area where people may want to be honest, but they have to stretch to speak up, right? And so, just
I'm a lot like that.
are you? Or not? Is that a smile? So anyway, it's something to think about because on the bell curve, people are all different. Some people are and other people are not so much, and it's difficult for them. So making an environment where people can be honest, and I think that's the ideal between a lot of the work sessions. There's maybe smaller groups where they can speak up more openly and get their information out into the group. Okay, well, thank you. Wally, have you had a chance to think about yours? You have a little more time. I'm picking up points.
I think the most important is sincerity for board members to actually, when we're discussing and proposing and ultimately supporting our agenda items, especially in a legislative session or setting, that that we're cohesive and that we march forward, as a collective and not deviate unless we decide to do so as a group.
Sure, great.
Well, I'd say our paramount duty is to be responsible. So responsibility.
What are some ways that that behavior manifests itself as a board member?
Responsibility to the members that we represent collectively, and I kind of wear two hats because I have a constituent group in the business end of it, the firefighters that I represent in my local, and other than that, but also we have to be responsible to the employers and to the taxpayers. So to to responsibly manage the plan fiscally, and also to do our members justice because we have an obligation to them not only to make sure that the funding is adequate, but to look at ways to improve the plan responsibly.
Great. Any other comments on how board members need to behave responsibly? That's kind of a big topic. Okay, great, thank you.
Important behavior would be commitment. To being a board member, being a fiduciary, being responsible. But being able to commit yourself to this board, and not just be entitled.
It's not a sideline thing, it's either you're here or you're not.
Because it's very important to the members.
Yeah.
What they're working for.
Great.
Respect, I would say. Respect between individuals, respect for different opinions, and so civil discourse, kind of
Cooperation.
what Kelly had talked about. You can have thoughtful, respectful conversations with different opinions, and that's a core part of kind of what I think is a key part of the behaviors there. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah?
Well, when you're last, all the good topics are taken. What are you going to set me up for failure here?
Which one took
No,
yours?
it's probably preparedness is a big piece of it here, and that goes hand in hand with what Kelly was talking about earlier. That has to do with engagement I mean, everybody can have a different piece of decorum, but if you're not actually engaged, if you're not emotionally involved in what's happening in front of you here, I mean, you're missing half what's happening. So,
one of the topics today is going to be about board members, and it's going to be about criteria for what do you look for in follow-on board members, and maybe some of this information might help with the criteria for that, for what you actually look for in succeeding board members. Because there's some pretty powerful stuff here to share. Okay, well, thank you very much. Next, I kind of wanted to share, I think in the second page of your handout is the expectations. This is this graph. So this is the third year that you guys have done this. And just as review quickly, so these are the expectations that you have all agreed on with the staff and yourself for being, in effect, satisfied board members. And as you look at the scale on this, 1 is not at all satisfied, 2 is slightly satisfied, 3 is somewhat satisfied, 4 is very satisfied, and 5 is extremely satisfied. And so what I wanted to do is you all sat down with Steve and gave your feedback to Steve. So I want to hear any additional comments that the staff might like to hear directly from you on each of these. We won't take a lot of time on it, but I think it might be helpful for them to hear some of your thoughts, okay? And so if we take the very first expectation you have is to help us responsibly govern the plan. And again, as Steve had said, that's a big part of today, is updating the strategic plan, addressing these 4 issues. And each time that has gone up. So any comments you'd like to share with the staff about that, kind of a keep doing, stop doing, start doing? What's working well? What would you like to see, maybe not as much of, and what would you like to start seeing? You don't have to have anything for these, but if there is something important you'd like to share with them, I think it would be helpful. And the reason I say that is this is a win-win. The reason this is being done is if the staff knows your expectations to be fully satisfied, then they win by knowing what success is. And when they know what success is, it's fulfilling for them to work to meet those expectations. And getting these, as you can see in this graph, it's gradually gotten better, and they gradually feel better and more fulfilled in being successful. And it's a win for you guys as board members by having your expectations consistently met or exceeded. So it's really a big win-win, and I'd just like to hear the staff hear some of your comments.
Just to start off on this, I'm not sure that this is an accurate measurement of aggregate expectations being met. I think that it's situation specific. You go back a couple of years here, we were dealing with the left 1, left 2 merger that kind of blindsided the board. Right. And we had a situation where we were totally not provided adequate information at that time. So I think the blue line you're talking about back in 12 is something that's almost issue specific driven or situation specific here versus just several different parts and feeling comfortable.
Okay. So is that still a subset of that expectation, though, or not?
When you have a single issue out there that is a
so big. Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree with Jeff on that. I think that often when we're doing these kind of things, you're reflecting back on just recent events, and so I think by what was going on at that year. I mean, the other thing is that on a scale, I think 5 is the world is amazing and we're at paradise, and 4 is that we're almost there. So I mean, it's pretty good. Anyway, I think that we're getting our needs met very well. The thing I would say, just from a board member, is that staff is always available if you need them, and I think that they take our concerns responsibly. And I see changes. I've seen changes since we've given this feedback from 2012 to 2014. Is that people are coming out. We're hard to get. We're busy people with other things, and they make the time to come out to our places. At least for me, personally, I feel very well supported.
All right. And just to reinforce it, this feedback for them is kind of like gasoline for a car, right? You can have the greatest car in the world, but if you don't have the fuel, it doesn't go anyplace. And the fuel of your feedback is what energizes them to improve things. And so your honest, objective feedback helps them help you.
And one of the things that just on looking at some of the behaviors that people wanted is that commitment. One of the things I had suggested, at least just we have busy lives and sometimes we miss meetings or things like that, was the staff have done when I do miss a meeting and I'm not able, they actually most of the time give me a call, tell me what happened, and so I think that I can stay in tune and not miss a month of gatherings and things like that. So, so that I'm prepared for the next gathering when we get
that's
together.
Important, and that's.
So.
I know and I did some work with them in preparing for this meeting, and what they tried to do was put themselves in your shoes and say, what's foremost on your minds? What have we heard from you? And then how can we facilitate you having constructive conversations? So they're really trying to do that and say, okay, what do they really need to address based on what they've told us? It's construction. Anyway, go ahead.
Just real quickly, I think that specifically help us responsibly govern the plan speaks to their technical efficiency and their knowledge and their continuing expertise, because the stuff that we deal with is very technical and it's not very intuitive at all. Some of it's very counterintuitive, and in order to make good policy decisions, we have to know the technical aspects of it, and so that speaks to their education, helping us become educated, and providing us with good information, good, accurate, specific information about the topics that we have to deal with.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one. I have brief exposure, but I'm sitting there saying I don't understand some of this stuff. So, yeah, okay, that's great feedback. And since we're kind of addressing a lot of this all at once here, rather than go through each one like I was, although I think I will do. Help us get up to speed as soon as possible. You're a new member relatively?
I am, yeah.
So how has that been for you?
It's been a challenge, but the information and the meetings with Steve and telephone calls and such, very resourceful.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't feel as if I have the institutional knowledge that maybe Mark and Kelly have and Jeff, but I know that they're available to me. So.
Okay. You're a little bit new, David. About 2 years. Mm-hmm. How's that been for you?
I think it's gotten better, and again, it was that feedback loop and some of the comments that I think last year talked about of trying to get some more during the downtime of trying to get calling in on meetings was really hard, and so I'm glad that we're trying new technologies, and it may or may not work, but this last year, remember that whole call in and getting our iPads and at least we're trying. I like that and getting the visual. I think that's a good responsiveness, and I feel like how do we engage? Because a key thing for me, and coming back to those behaviors, is there's only 11 of us. We don't see each other that often, and I really value. That's why I'm here today. Is value the time to get to know where each of you and as a board we want to go. And so when I miss a meeting or I can't make it, I feel like I'm losing out on something there, and I don't feel like I don't meet up to that commitment. So the more things that make me successful as a board member, then I feel like I can contribute to the full 11 that are here. So.
Great. Keep us informed. Any comments on this? It looks like that expectation went down just a little bit, but still is being met. Is there any topics there that the staff needs to hear?
It's changed, but it's gotten better. We're going to the iPads, we're going to the left board email system, not using personal emails. So the transition took a little while, but it's still the bugs out. It's providing a lot of good information, timely, and needed information.
Great.
I don't see why it would have dropped.
Right. Yeah, it's not much. It's kind of it's at a point of where it doesn't make too much difference.
It's real hard to
keep us. But that's
keep us, having us be prepared.
That's great feedback. Okay, thank you. Support our policy decisions. Does everybody know what that would mean? Support the board policy decisions and legislative recommendations before the legislature and other state agencies. Any feedback to staff? I'd like to share with the staff there.
I can't think of a time where the staff didn't support a decision the board made, so.
Right. Okay. I know that came up, I think, a while back, where it was like, I think Steve, maybe it was last year, Steve was asking for some clarity on where you wanted him to be sure and support. You know, I think was going out and doing certain things, and it really helped you, right, Steve, as far as knowing it.
Yeah, and I think it helps everybody. It helped everybody to talk about that role because you make a decision as a board, and then session starts. Many of you are representatives of organizations. And then once session starts, they may not. Your organizations may not support the same decision that the board made, whether it's the employers or the stakeholder groups, and then there's that potential anyway tension. Why is Steve going out and supporting this proposal that my organization does not support? And so it was just a good reminder that I'm supporting the decisions that you decide on here. And then once everybody kind of goes their separate way during session, that's unavoidable. But at least you know where I'm going to be at the issue, on an issue, and you're not worrying about, well, once session starts, if a group comes in and says, well, we're opposed to that bill. And some of you have sat next to me in a legislative hearing and said, well, we've got concerns about that. So, but that's just the way session goes. At least for where I'm at, my marching orders, if you will. I'm clear about what you expect me to do.
Okay, great, thanks. Fifth one, educate the plan stakeholders. Any feedback to the staff on that? Is that expectation being met? Are there areas that you'd like to see?
I think over the course of the last, 6 months, maybe we've had a number of conversations about the staff coming out to our stakeholder groups, whether that's employer groups, police, fire, and it's been, we've used it a lot at the State Council of Firefighters, Steve's, and I'm sure the other law enforcement groups as well. So it's been great to have now the employers having the opportunity. Steve's a resource for them as well. And so I think that will probably increase moving forward because we're focusing more on internal stakeholder involvement and participation of our staff at stakeholder meetings.
Good. Great to know. Okay. All right. 6, provide professional administrative support. Feedback you'd like to share with the staff there. That's a 5-0.
I was going to say they got nowhere to go with that.
A 5-0 is like, can't get any better, right? So you guys are all having your expectations met there. The last one, assist us in making responsible decisions. What would you like to share with them on that?
Well, I think that just reflects or harkens back to what Mark was saying earlier about the research and the reporting and the educational factor, and then the willingness to solicit these other folks to come in and give us briefings and so on and so forth, so that we have all the information to make an educated decision.
I think the relationships that the staff has with other staff and other agencies that we interrelate with is really valuable. So the the relationships they have with DRS, the relationships they have with labor and industries, makes things work quite well. Actually, I think they're very mindful of how important that is, and I think that's very helpful to the board. And I will say to my own local, we've had issues that aren't necessarily Left Plan 2 board issues, but they're left members, and they've been able to guide us and give us contact information for people in those other agencies. That's been very helpful for the people that I represent.
Well, thank you for taking the time to share with them. It really is very important, and being a witness to watching them work and prepare and try and put themselves in your shoes and listen to you and all the work they try to do that. It sounds like it's definitely working and it's appreciated. So, okay, so now we're going to kind of, Tim's going to give a kind of brief overview about the strategic plan, background, and accomplishments to date, and then we'll get into the work session.
Everybody got a packet then to take a look at? So there's 3 documents in your packet which are related to this part of the discussion. There is a copy of the strategic plan, which was last updated about the 4th page of the packet. So the copy of the strategic plan. Then in about the 12th page, there's a document that looks just like the strategic plan, but it's called the Report of Accomplishments. So we'll talk about that in a minute. And then behind that document, there is a chart that talks about the participation at the board meeting. It's kind of like this. So that's where I'm going to start at. So the thing to note here is that, so this is the 4th time that the board has gotten together to do strategic planning. The first being way back in 2004 when we wrote the original strategic plan. Since then, we've done a couple of updates, and we're here today to do a further update. One of the things that there's some questions around it, but we wanted to make sure that everybody had a chance to see that. You'll note that over the course of this time, only about half of the board members have been to 2 or more strategic planning sessions, and only 3 of the board members have been here for what is all 4. So not everybody's been part of the plan as it's moved along, and the thing to recognize is that over time things may change, priorities may change. That's why we're here trying to we need to do some updates on the plan to make sure that the plan is going to meet the changing needs of the board members, the people that you guys serve, and the environment that we operate within. Now, companies all over always engage in strategic planning, but one of the worst problems with strategic planning is that these companies spend hundreds of hours, lots of dollars writing these incredibly elaborate strategic plans, eloquently written. They go in this great big elaborate Ross notebook, and they go up on a bookshelf, and they don't come down again until somebody says, "Hey, we need to do strategic planning." The absolute worst thing that can happen with strategic planning is that it never gets used. So part of this, what we're doing today, is making sure that you get to see the results from the strategic plan. Because I want, as staff, it's important for us to let you know how this is resulting in the accomplishments that lead for accomplishing your mission of responsibly governing this plan. So let's just quickly look at the strategic plan again itself. There's 4 primary goals that have been set in this plan, which have remained stable since the original strategic plan. 4 very solid goals, are very appropriate to a pension plan governance. So the first one being enhancing benefits for the member, which is, is a key. Providing stakeholders with a voice in the plan governance, which we know is a primary emphasis for the board to begin with. Maintaining the financial integrity of the plan, which is very important because that's been one of the cornerstones of the actions that the board has taken in its dealing with contribution rates and consideration for the employer community, for budgeting and whatnot. And then lastly, informing the stakeholders. So being able to make sure the stakeholder groups are in line with us and they know what we're doing and that we're listening to them. So that's just the brief. So you'll see that within that strategic plan, that what the board has done then is in these discussions that we have some key objectives that we've set for each strategic goal. And from there, the last time that we all met, we set out some what we called our key tactics. So basically, how we're going to accomplish what we wanted to do. Okay, so that's basically how they're set up. You may see different languages, but it's all pretty much the same thing. Just working your way down from the highest levels down to how are we going to accomplish what we set out to do. So you can see how all those details are in there, all the tactics you want. So with that in mind, how that's set up, I want to turn to our report of accomplishments. Now, I'm not going to read everything on here, but there are some things that I want to put out there. What we've done is that we've been tracking along with the things that we have done. And so the report of accomplishment looks just like the strategic plan, but everywhere where there's a deliverable or some sort of statement of something we want to do to accomplish your goals, you'll see that we've added in there the information of here's things that we've done. You'll find those are identified by check marks. So you'll know these are all kinds of things. So let me highlight a couple of these items that are in here. So we'll start with goal 1, enhancing benefits for the members. This has been an incredible time of change. With financial pressures, the poor economic climate, always a crazy political environment, a lot of organizational challenges. But you've still been able to make improvements in the plan, and this is over this measurement of like 2011 to 2015. So during that time period, in a very difficult environment, the board recommended 10 issues to the legislature. 3 have been passed, so a 30% passage rate. Now the thing I like to compare that to is, well, how much does the legislature actually pass? Over that same time period, the legislative passage rate was only 17%. So you're almost doubled over what the legislature passed itself. I consider that fairly successful. Historically speaking, the board has been, incredibly successful. Since the beginning of the board, we've actually had an 80% passage rate. So that reflects that challenges in what's going on. One other thing I want to highlight there: those are just the legislative accomplishments. That you recall early on there was some focus on specific benefit improvements that we were trying to maintain. Like, for example, building the death and disability benefits was, improving those was a key item. That at the last strategic planning session that we kind of shifted to more of a maintenance of those types of benefits, and we started looking for affordable or no-cost type improvements, recognizing the environment. So we've had several successes in getting non-legislative improvements. So the Ombudsman program, which we fought for several years and was requested by the members, after Labor. That program has been created, has been funded, and now staffed with Tammy as our death and disability ombudsman. You may remember the community college tuition waivers. That was an issue that we looked at many times. There was a benefit that we got for related to the death and disability benefit members, ensuring that their survivors were going to be entitled to education benefits. And the Roth option that we've asked DRS to put onto the deferred compensation program. That'll be going into effect this July 2015. So those are mechanisms where we've also been able to improve benefits not using the legislative process. So you've had success on both sides. As you see, I'll leave you to read all the other ones that are related. If you have any questions on any side, we're more than happy to talk about it. On providing the stakeholder with a voice.
Just one question for you, Tim. And for older, more senior board members, I'd be really interested in the 35 issues. That would be nice to just find out that list of items because I think it is important to go from the beginning of time, really, not just in the 4-year increments, but all the different changes and what the board has been successful over the course of the last 10 years with the legislature.
Members, what have you done for them?
Yeah, and I think, the key thing is some of those things, I think, in those early years were changes that were specifically targeted, and those are still providing benefits today. So, that would be nice to have that list if you. Obviously, it sounds like there is a list out there. So.
I do have a list I can provide you. So.
Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let me move on to goal 2, which is providing stakeholders with a voice in governance. So there are the objectives. We're enhancing the communication media for the stakeholders and maintaining stakeholder confidence in the integrity of the plan. So one of the tactics on there was to take a leadership role in making presentation to the stakeholders. And as some of you had mentioned, that's been, you enjoyed having us come out and speak to you. So in total so far, one of the new features that we launched in the last couple of years is what we call our outreach program, where where staff goes to your conferences and we set up a table and we have information and staff there to talk to members, answer questions, provide information about their accounts, about retirement, anything that they want to talk about. So far we've been to 8 conferences, and both police and firefighter, and we've been to an employer event. We'll be going to the Washington counties next month. We'll be talking with the employer side, the fire commissioners this week. So we're getting to all the different membership groups with this outreach program. It's been very, very well received. We get a lot of information from the members this way, and we're able to give them a lot of information. And as we talk about with presentations at the like legislative time or the bigger conferences, that primarily Steve, I think I've done a couple of them, and I know Ryan has done one, that we've actually done 33 presentations, full-on presentations, which is an average of 8 per year. The goal, the actual measurement goal, was 5 per year, so we well exceeded what the goal was per year. But that's what we've done to take a leadership role in getting out and giving information out to the membership group. And there we're able to communicate information about the plan, the status of the plan, and how it's given. And of course, maintaining the financial integrity of the plan, which is set at goal 3, but that's always, you spend a lot of time in that area. 17 actuarial presentations, 5 investment-related presentations. You guys are one of the best educated boards in that field. From all the peers that I talk with at my conferences, nobody does the amount of work that you guys do in the actuarial world. So we made a chart just to take a look at. I want to highlight at least what you've actually accomplished here with the decisions you made in the environment that it's been. 2 of the big things that have been focused on, starting from the very first strategic plan, was the stability of contribution rates. So this top chart here, as you can see, with the member, employer, and the state contributions rate, with the 50-30-20 split, you can see over the last 10 years, or actually starting from 2007, which our stability rate program started like 2005, 2006, where we raised the rates back up to the normal cost and then stabilized them. So this is about where the stabilization period started. And you can see, that's about as stable as you can get. Now I know, you start looking around at the other plans in this state, you start looking around at plans in the country, their rate curves do not look like this. Most of them are on an upward trend. So as far as reaching that accomplishment of stabilizing rates, obviously you guys have done a fantastic job in that regard.
So, Tim, on this one, it would be nice to go back to 2000 so it matches up with the one below, just so you can see, previous action, and then when the board did stability,
I had
the changes.
I agree. And I had that same thought. I just got around on space. But part of where we decided to show was that part of this process that in terms of the stabilizer rate is that they wanted them predictable, and this shows that moving forward, because of the process you have used for adopting rates on a broader scale than just every 2 years, that all the way out to 2017, the rates are fairly predictable at a very stable level. But I'd be happy to produce that chart if you'd like to see that. The other side of that, then, that of course correlates into the funding ratio, and the goal was maintaining that funding ratio over 100%. And the important part here, where this line is, that's where the board really started, 2003. You'll note that there was a high point back prior to that point, but the plan was still fairly young. It didn't have a lot of benefits going out, good economic times. But then the legislature started taking on the rates, and there were issues. And as that started, and as members started retiring, so the rates started to take a dramatic fall. But with the changes in the policies by the board, you were able to catch it, stabilize it, and we've been able to maintain a funding ratio over 100%, and well over 100%. This plan right now is the best funded plan in the country, not just the public safety, but if you look at all the major reports that are out there, the Public Fund Survey, Morningstar, Fitch, this plan for open plans is the best funded plan in the country. This rate will always continue to drop a little bit because as more members retire, we're still looking at the plan. As more members retire, we have more money going out. but that's expected. But we will always work to ensure that we can maintain at that funding ratio. So the financial integrity of the plan isn't in question. Goal 4 on the last goal, so informing the stakeholders. As we said, we've done a lot of work to go out and talk to the stakeholder groups and provide them information. One of the other things, though, that had been asked about was access to the RS seminars, where there really wasn't a lot of access. So since we started working with that, the adjustments that we've had that over this period, that DRS has started doing, they've done 106 LEOFF-specific seminars now. They've done 78 seminars that involve LEOFF with all the other Plan 2s. They've also now allowed, if there's a seminar that's full and a LEOFF 2 member calls, they'll actually comp them in, they'll let them into that program. So they're giving them a priority access into seminars that are even full, which is something we've worked with them. And also the seminars are available online now for viewing. So if somebody can't get into it, or can't make one, they can go to the DRS website and see one online. So the openness of information flowing to the members is far greater. One of the messages, though, that we convey, both when we go out and talk to them, and I touch on part of it, that one, we are definitely the best funded plan in the country. But the way to recognize this is that what we started to get some national recognition for is that we're the only pension plan that through the Great Recession, through all the turbulent times, that we've maintained 100% funding status, we haven't raised contribution rates, and we haven't had benefit cuts, and in fact we've made benefit improvements. I haven't talked with any other plan when I've gone to any conference. I've talked to anybody else that can say that. In fact, they're coming to us saying, what the heck are you guys doing? So, kudos to you for having made the financial, stability and the work with your membership such important pieces. But that all this work is what, setting the strategic plan. And then for us, being able to take your plan and turn that into essentially a work plan, which are all those tactics, that you can see that within every single item, there is some item of success that we have for every single item that you have in this plan. So as we said at the beginning, this strategic plan is a key ask or a key element for a key clue for us on how to fulfill your expectation for helping you govern the plan. This is the key instrument that we use. So please take a look through it. Make sure that all these items are the types of things that you want to do. That it's from sessions like this where we will go back and we will develop, and work with you to develop, the next, where we go from here and how we continue to meet your expectations.
So Tim, are you looking for us to go through these? I mean, great work is just on looking at the goals and the tactics and commenting back on that. Are you looking for us to revise those, to say, keep going in that direction? What's the expectation this morning on looking over those 4 goals and the specific tactics or things like that?
Well, the plan, Tom's going to talk about that, but the plan for today is we being staff, started out by coming up with 2 topics that we heard from your expectation interviews that we knew were on your minds. And we gave you those 2 with some background material, so those will be your first work session.
Okay.
And that'll be the kind of stuff that you're asking yourself. Do we want to keep working on this? Do we want to change either what we're doing, come up with some new strategies, or just... And then you guys will have the opportunity. We created 2 more for the second work session, but you'll have an opportunity to kind of evaluate, there's something else I'd rather work on that I feel is more urgent than those 2. Otherwise, you'll work on those 2 for the second. And it's the same kind of thing. The questions, keep, stop, start that Tom was talking about earlier. There's not enough time today to go over every element of the plan. So we kind of picked 4 that seemed to bubble to the top in the discussions with you for you to focus on today.
So I'll just throw out an idea. It may probably is on the parking lot. Was when I got to that goal 4 of just inform the stakeholders. I was just trying to find out when's the last time we did a survey of our left 2 members about how do we interact? I mean, do we give surveys about how we're doing or things like that? We do our own expectations each year of us on the board, but do we go out to our stakeholders and survey? And that was just a question. I think in the past, there are materials I've read before that we did that a while back, but I was just trying to find out if we've done that recently.
Yeah, you are right, and that is one item on here. And the last time we did a survey with the membership was a few years ago, and it was a very specific survey about furlough uses, and so that was very topical. We haven't done one in the broader sense. We did one at the very beginning of the board. I think it was around 2004, 2005. We did a broad membership survey just to find out, get a baseline, if you will. We have not followed that particular survey up, but that's kind of an area where it's certainly a point of discussion about, is that something that is useful or important? What is it that you want to take from that? Those are discussions that certainly can happen. I think we at least at the staff level, we've discussed it, that all the goals and even to continue within these tactics are still all very, very appropriate. What this gives you an opportunity to see, what's still here, what has accomplished. And I think for you as board members now have a chance to give that further consideration of going, here's an area I think that you can give some thought about. Maybe this is more important, or maybe there's some new ideas that have come up that we can start incorporating into the next version of the work plan. So I think those are all very good questions. I don't know. I think some of those will come up today, and we're going to capture all of that. And as you go through this material, more things will come up, and move those forward. But yeah, that's definitely those sort of things are what will come out of this competition today.
Thank you.
All right. I know we're behind. We got a little bit of a late start, so should we continue, or do you want to take a 5-minute break? Okay, let's keep moving. Good. Great. So we're going to start the first work session with, and in the back of your packet, there's the board turnover handout, and people are going to work on that are Kelly, Wally, Jeff, and Kevin. So we kind of sat you in that table right there. Right here. And then the second topic of issue is stakeholder alignment. So David, Jack, Mark, and Pat are going to work on that. So if you would take the next 30 to 40 minutes and read this, review it, discuss the questions and issues in there, and then write on, we'll have easels by your tables, write on there what thoughts you want to share, and then what you would like the staff to do next, and what you would like the board to do next. And so we'll kind of plan on until 10 after. We'll start with this group over here, and then we'll have lunch, so it doesn't get cold or whatever, and then come back and share. And if you guys want to work over lunch and share with us, I don't think you see one on the board. Maybe take a shorter lunch, and then come back and take 15 to 20 minutes, and then come back and share the next group. So we'll decide during lunch if that works or not. So let's start with this group, and they're going to be sharing with the other board members about what the issue is, what their findings are, what they recommend be done, that the board do, and what they recommend the team does.
All right, you can take a look at your piece of paper there to see what our work session was on board turnover. So the action plan at the bottom, we're answering those questions. So number one, we felt as though we tried to massage the desired qualities. It almost makes it sound like we want to be as inclusive as possible for anybody that would like to apply or has an interest in this. That we don't set them up by saying, having knowledge of pension policy, we've got the conversation about funding methodology, that somebody would say, well, I don't know enough about it, so I wouldn't put in for that. We want to be as inclusive as possible. So when we thought about, desired may not be the right word, we thought maybe qualities being, things like your ability to attend and participate. That's it's crucial to be able to attend all these things and know about what the commitment is more than having knowledge of pension policy. And then we went to our organizational values and said, it would be, one of the qualities would be your ability to practice the organizational values. You can go to the strategic plan, look at the organizational values, and see that is something that you can function within those kind of parameters. And this is a team environment, that kind of goes with the organizational values there. They're all about respecting each other, communicating. Number 2, should we share the strategic plan with new members? And we said yes. I believe that we do that now with the new packet, that they do get those, but then we felt as though there needs to be a consistent and continual reference to our strategic plan. I mean, in my time here, I think we do that more. I look at Jack. I think in our experience, after we've established them, we have referred back to them quite often to kind of remind us of why we're making certain policy decisions, and we kind of always use that as the backdrop to refer back to, because all of us established and participated in the process of establishing the strategic plan. So it kind of validates, I think, what we do when we develop policy here. And then the third one is the answer was just absolutely, that all stakeholder groups should be notified when there's an opening. Not sure what the process is currently. I think we do that informally with the stakeholder groups. So and we felt that, yes, that is something that we expect always happens, should always happen, and I think we believe that it has been occurring. And then it's left to the policymakers at the governor's office to figure out who that appointment is going to be. So a couple of reasons, when you look at the background issues, we've got an action plan is necessary because there are some changes going to be coming, and we recognize that. So that is what we as a group came up with as our action plan, how to establish the action plan. We felt like, yes, it would be nice if some people got a background of what the qualities, desirable qualities are, and the strategic plan is a big part of that.
So what would you like the board to, what would you like the team to do to help? I think there's 3 appointments that are coming up or whatever. So what would you like the team to do to help, and what would you like the board to do specifically, I guess, at this point? Here. Go ahead.
I have a real issue with a 2-term appointment. My second term is almost up. I'm not going to reapply anyway because I'm going to retire. But I think the amount of time and effort it's taken to educate you 3 guys and to say you've had your 2 terms, you're out, I think is a bad idea. I mean, it's really important. You got a guy over here who's an attorney who spends his whole life doing pensions, and he still doesn't know everything, even though he thinks he does. But once in a while, he will ask a question that he doesn't know, and I think to disrupt the board by telling a guy, well, you've been here 2 terms, so you're done. I don't care how good a job you've done or how bad a job you've done. You're out. I think that's a bad idea. I think it really puts the board at a disadvantage. And I think and you're talking to David. He's talking about bring me up to speed on this stuff that happened before. Let me know. Tell me what the history is. And I think that's what we lose when we do that. And I think it's a terrible idea.
Yeah, and we had in the beginning had a brief conversation about that, and we didn't feel that we had the ability to control that. That's
Hell, you voted for him.
Governor, well, I've been through several governors. They all have that same unwritten policy.
I know.
So some of the things I was thinking about was when you asked what could the board do is if you know that there's a vacancy that is going to be coming up, or is just not having the lapse. Not having a county rep for the last year has been unfortunate for the board. You know, there's only 11 of us. We're down to 10. It just, you know, we're missing. It's been a whole year. I don't know. So at least it seemed like one is to avoid those gaps, because we only meet a few times a year already. So if how long it takes, so that would be one thing I would like from the board, is that we always have members have gone through the process, because I don't know where that is in the process, how we can influence that, and whatever happens with these terms is that if there's going to be a third term and it starts in August, great. If it's choosing to do something else, okay. I mean, I think I kind of agree with you as the governor, you know. But come August, we should have somebody, you know, the board should be at full strength. So I don't know what more we can do as a board to encourage that, to push for that. Is this similar to other boards and commissions? How do we compare for the amount of vacancies and time? You know?
I guess I'd be just speculating. I know there's a lot of vacancies in boards and commissions right now, but I think we have. I think if this was an adopted practice, this action plan, we'd still have that one vacancy, because I think we've done almost all these things.
I think it's really the responsibility of those organizations to find, recruit, and put those names forward at an early stage and be mindful of that. And I think that just by the nature of the board, that the employee groups are very, very, they follow that very closely, and we have a keen interest, because not only are we fiduciaries of the plan, but we're members of the plan. And so I think that that speaks to the longevity of the members who are on there. And I know I've had past conversations with a couple of employer representatives from the county and the cities, and there's been quite a bit of turnover. And so I'm always interested in how you got interested in public pension policy, or how did you get here? Why are you here? You know, welcome, but I'm just trying to find out. And I've had a lot of those folks say, well, nobody else would do it, right? And so they had to find me somehow, and I guess I'll sign up for this. And that's just part of the dynamic.
So is it a lack of a pipeline of people that are motivated, you know, the values, the behaviors you talked about, that are sincere, committed, you know, responsible, who want to be on this board? Do we not have a pipeline of people that, and that's what needs to be built?
It's getting people interested in taking the time and making the commitment to.
Are you talking employer groups or employee groups?
I'm not
Because
sure.
it makes a difference.
I'm not sure.
Because employee groups, there is interest, there is commitment.
Okay.
And if we weren't here, we'd have somebody else here that wants to be here.
All right.
In fact, that exists today. There's people that would like to be here, but 3 spots are already taken up. So I think Pat brings up a very good point. That was what was going through my mind here, is that we have a vested interest in this thing.
Right.
You know? And I mean, likewise, the employer groups do as well, but their vested interest is a little different. You know, ours is enhance the plan, the benefit, or the benefits for the plan for the sake of the plan members, versus, listen, I want to responsibly manage the plan. I don't have a problem with enhancements as long as it doesn't impact the bottom line.
Right.
So I think it just, for us, you know, the plan members, it's a desirable position.
Yeah.
Can I ask the board a question? Let me give you sort of like a.
I'm gonna find out from Tom if that's okay.
Let me give you like a real life practical question that came up in my experience. So the employer rep's been vacant, and Glenn the former employer rep. I ran into him at a select committee on pension policy meeting, and he said, you know, Steve, Doug Cochran, who was the prior county rep, he might be willing to fill that. He asked me if it had been filled yet, and I said no. He goes, Doug might be willing to do that, and I said, well, he was a good rep, in my opinion. While he was on the board, he showed up, he was engaged, the things that you talked about. And Glenn suggested, Steve, why don't you call Doug, see if he's still interested, and then contact the AWC and kind of put that out as a suggestion to them. And I did not do that. In my mind, I felt like that was something, one, it was something I had no direction from you guys one way or another about how you would feel about that. And I felt like that's not in my own litmus test. When something comes up that's unexpected, it's like that doesn't feel so much like a staff role, and it feels more like I'd be getting my fingers into something that's really not my business. So I did not follow up on that. But is that the kind of thing, what do you think would be the right way to handle that? Did I do the right thing by just staying out of it? Or is there possibly some role? How would you have reacted if you found out later on that, Steve called up AWC and threw out Doug Cochran's name? For instance, if Doug got appointed, he came back to the board, he's like, I blame Steve for being back. He was the one who called him up and, fed me to them. Kind of a issue. Doug he had a good sense of humor in that. But that's just sort of like a real life, from the staff perspective, looking at this question of, is there anything we could be doing?
What's wrong with Glenn doing that?
Yeah.
What's wrong with referring to David Klein and have Dave call him? Hey, are you interested in doing this?
Yeah, I mean, the one part is that, let me just be, it seems like there's two issues here. One is that there's a question about, this is about turnover and if, on reappointments and things like that. So, Jack, you're saying that no matter what, you are going to be here. So, but there'll be someone in. You already have that system in place in your organizations. And it sounds like, and those are the qualities we want. So that's one issue. I think that we're okay with that, figuring out what those turnovers are. We'll make sure that those are. On the employer side is, what is that pipeline? Is that, when AWC, when the vacancy came up and, Greg was retiring, we had it set up. There were three of us. All went to the gov, and they just chose one. So I got to be one of the three that were, the one that was selected. And I'm not sure how long between Greg and I were here, but, so I felt like the group that's on one of these three, it seems like, and so that's the question, is like calling AWC and saying, hey, Greg's retiring, you better get going. That seems like a reasonable thing I would expect from you, Steve.
Okay.
Calling the organization, giving names, that's the next. I'm not so sure about that, but saying, there's a vacancy. If I said, I'm going to be retiring, or I need to leave the board by X date, I would be talking to Candace right over here at AWC and saying, okay, I have a commitment to always have that seat be filled. And so that's what I don't know what the counties. I've worked in counties. I don't know what that organization, why that one hasn't gone through that same process and how we can work on it. AWC works with them. But if I understand it, those are the three pipelines, right? One from AWC, they provide three. One from the counties, right? And then where's the third one?
Fire districts.
Historically, it's been fire commissioners or general government. There was counties at one time kind of had two people.
So, I don't know if I want to have Candace talk. I mean, if you want to hear from the employer side, what would help?
The reason why you guys are cued in is because Candace is here.
Exactly.
AWC, Association of Western Cities, has somebody, I don't say participating is probably too strong a word, but they're here.
Yep.
Observing,
engaged,
monitoring.
Yep.
And I don't know that the counties have done that for a long time. You bet.
And this is Candace Bach. She works for AWC. She's one of our lobbyists. And she is a former city manager, if you didn't know that, and has worked in other cities. In Lakewood, I think, was deputy there. So has lots of history in the local side. So thank you, Candace, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for always letting me sit in and pick up here. The recruitment process for all the boards and commissions can be challenging. Just finding part-time elected officials, full-time city managers who can take the time out. But I have to say, our biggest stumbling block is the time at the governor's office. The Select Committee on Pension Policy has an employer vacancy, and I've had at least 2 applicants in since the end of June, early July, still waiting for that appointment to be made. I happen to know the counties have put forward at least one name for your vacancy here, and haven't succeeded in getting that through the governor's process yet. And so that's information for you all, how and if this board has any role in helping that process along. But it can be challenging to line people up. I think we try and be on board with knowing who's coming and going, and start to get the word out there, start to make those phone calls. And it usually takes individual phone calls to people to get them to apply. But that process in the governor's office, I don't know what happens there, but it takes.
Well, we've got this horrible habit at the state council of picking the winning governor, so we'll handle that.
Bring back Chris.
That sounds like some new insight there.
But I think that, getting back to what is the board's role is, I think, and this is from Steve, I think having those connections, if those are the pipelines and those are the expected, is that I want Steve to have that personal connection with those associations, not about the people who should be there, but that the organization, you need to come up with your own, and maybe encourage that, give ideas about how other ones do it, and say, and if it's the governor's saying, you need to do this 6 months ahead of time, because it's going to take you time to get through there. And so I think that is a role that I would like Steve and your staff to do, is make sure that I think that the board wants to have all the positions filled. And then also working, I'm not sure on the legislature side, do you feel like your process was selection and process? Do we always have a senator and a representative?
I think the legislature deals with a lot of the same things as the cities. There's only 147 of us, and there's a ton of boards and commissions. This happens to be one of them.
Yeah.
Jeff and I obviously are interested in this, and there seems to be less interest in the Senate, and it can, I'm sure, flip very easily. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else on this topic?
No, I want to kind of, for Steve, for the staff, that I think David's comments there about dealing with associations, I think, is appropriate for you. And if it needs to be more global, if you want to add the chair position to a letter, something like that, so that it doesn't look like it's staff-driven.
Right.
I mean, I think we could probably accommodate that as well. Just the notification of vacancy.
Is there any way that the board gets notified or the staff gets notified of an applicant? When you submit it to the governor's office, does that, or a copy of that, go to anybody else? I mean, is that possible? Is this
Talk about it, but there's a formal process afterwards.
Yeah, for instance, I have no idea who counties they have sent to the governor's office.
Well, it's not necessarily who, but even if.
Yeah, or in that case, even if. I wasn't aware that a name had gone over. Sometimes different organizations will ask me about what do you think, what kind of person would fit in on the rules or something like that in the past. That's one of the reasons why I want to put this up there, is to get a sense from you. What kind of board members are you looking for, and is it okay? Is it expected, in particular, for us to be sharing that
hotbed of
job description, for lack of a better word, with some of the nominating organizations?
Okay, so if that's it on that topic, what I suggest is lunch is ready. What do you guys think of? You guys, I know we're all kind of. Let's get going. What about 15 or 20-minute lunch, or do you want a longer one?
We'll give them 15 minutes, and we can eat while they're doing their presentation.
All right. Whatever. You guys tell me. How long of lunch do you want?
Play it by ear.
Play it by ear? When everybody's kind of done, then we'll just kind of form back. Okay? Let's do it. It's ready out there.
Like that, we got these high tech microphones. Quite the system. Is this so that they are, and then you have to hold them steady? I haven't quite seen.
Okay, great.
It's anything that exceeds
I
a
think
shift.
you were absolutely right on. Just let it happen.
Yeah. So it's not hours
I
work,
think it happened
which is the
just about
FLA's.
the right time.
health
So
and
let's start
safety.
with let's go with this group and share, I guess,
Anything
what the
beyond
issue
your
is
regularly
and
scheduled shift or
what
any-
your
any shift.
thoughts are about it, and then what your recommendations are.
Good.
There you go.
You're the guy.
That's all right.
So until I get the hook. So they had me actually write these up, and the writing isn't so good, but that way we can make it say whatever we want. So we talked a lot about stakeholder alignment. We had a lot of discussion about difficulty when stakeholder groups don't agree and how that impacts our ability to get legislation passed. We had a pretty good discussion about the career change fixed legislation that actually it's kind of ironic. There were two sort of competing interests that we identified there. One was to a certain degree we all agreed that it's really not very good public policy to do what the state of Washington does with respect to that. And so from my perspective anyway, I agree that for example, we have a lot of folks in Vancouver who retire, collect their pension, and then go to Oregon because they can still collect their pension and they get a salary and accrue service credit and invest in another system. And I guess from a public policy point, there's nothing wrong with that. So it drives a lot of good fire chiefs and police chiefs out of the state of Washington where our communities could benefit from that sort of thing. And they go over to Oregon because it's to their economic advantage to do so. The other competing interest that we saw that I personally related to as a board member is the law is what it is, and we had made some headway towards sort of chipping away at that restrictive structure, and then there were some employers who decided to do things that really didn't align with the intent of the law. And so I think our issue as a board was we want to foster a good relationship with the legislature. We want them to see that we're being responsible, and this is to some people this would look like it was an abuse of what the statute was meant to do, and so those were sort of the two competing interests that went there, and so we had a sort of a big difference of opinion. And interestingly enough, I thought that particular piece of legislation was that the legislature would jump on that because we're helping them fix a problem that was their problem. And apparently, because there was disagreement among the stakeholder groups in the legislature about that particular piece of legislation, and it was designed to fix that problem that the legislature had identified, they didn't pass that. Maybe they didn't understand it, maybe it was too complicated or complex for them, but they always went to the default position of, well, the stakeholder groups can't agree on that, so that's all we need to hear, and that's why we're going to say no to that particular issue. So we talked a lot about that, and so the questions at the bottom, and so that was sort of an example of stakeholder groups and how the board interacts with those groups and how the staff interacts with those groups. And then this is what we came up with. Should the board facilitate more meetings among stakeholder organizations, and should the board attempt to identify or develop common goals for all stakeholder groups? Our discussion really centered around that we shouldn't attempt to align stakeholder groups as a board, it's probably a better idea for those stakeholder groups to have discussions amongst themselves. But we did think that issues from the group should be dealt with at the board level. But there's a difference of the board trying to manage those other groups versus the board trying to put forward and be as unanimous as possible. Because the history is that the board has been effective when it's been unanimous, no matter what the issue is. And for us, it was sort of we'd rather be effective rather than be right over any piece. So we thought that a really high value was for the board to move forward and try to gain as much consensus as possible. And just historically, we've been looking back, and that's when we've been the most successful. And we talked about the misalignment of stakeholder groups is a relatively recent phenomenon, and because the vast majority of the legislation we proposed is passed, and we have done a lot in terms of education for different members. And thinking historically, the first couple of years, well, actually when the board was created, there was a lot of skepticism among employer groups and among the employer representatives that the structure of this board was 6 employee representatives and 3 employer representatives and then 2 representatives from the legislature. And when we were forming the initiative and had the political process of getting that initiative passed, there was terrible resentment and dissent among a lot of employer organizations because they thought that this group at 6 to 5, I guess you could say, that the employee representatives were going to run roughshod, pass, or try to pass very expensive pension enhancements that were going to be to the detriment of the employers and the taxpayers. That never happened because the board had always had a very collaborative approach, and we're very mindful of the costs of what we were proposing and wanted to make sure that the board was going to be very credible in what they did and how they did it. And so we had to work hard at the beginning to educate the employer representatives and the legislative representatives that we were going to be a consensus board, that we weren't going to run roughshod over the employers or the state reps. And so that speaks a lot to our success as a board. And David actually reminded me that when we talked about misalignment of stakeholder groups being a recent phenomenon, it seems like that because that's the way we've operated, but in the beginning it wasn't so. And I think a good example of that is Senator Parlett, a very conservative, fiscally conservative person. But once she understood, and the issues that we tackled to begin with were death benefits, duty death benefits, disability benefits that really had a relatively modest cost, but were hugely important to the people who were in those situations, the members who were in those situations out there protecting the public. And so we did a lot to educate those folks. David Mosley, I think, was on the board from the beginning, and he really was my opinion, a very thoughtful person who was skeptical to begin with, but once he learned how those benefits or the lack of benefits compared to other public safety plans in the country, he was supportive of that. And Senator Parlett as well, she became, for her time on the board, the subject matter expert for people in the Senate. And although she wasn't a pension expert, so they sort of deferred to her. So,
okay. You guys have talked about it for a while. What's the thoughts from the other table on this?
Deathly silent. You were so amazing or so confusing. It didn't make a sense, and it takes a while to sink in.
Amazing.
That's right.
The amazing award has been granted. No, this good. Let's give the chance to think
Not
about
even
it.
an attorney there. That's
Made sense what he said to me.
I'm looking at the questions here, the action plan. So are you guys advocating for that, more meetings?
No.
No.
Not from the board to be able to, I think our discussion centered around the board not being the organizer of those stakeholder groups, but taking input from the stakeholder groups, and then trying to be as collaborative as possible as a board. And to some degree, it's ironic that the legislature, even when we were trying to do something as a board that was in what we believed was in their interest, they didn't approve that just because there was dissension among the stakeholder groups.
Okay. So this is not to say that the staff wouldn't, as we indicated earlier about the staff going out and meeting with stakeholder groups.
That didn't have anything.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Providing information, but not necessarily organizing stakeholder groups around one specific issue and then advocating for that, or trying to align the stakeholder group as a board or as staff for the board.
Well, you're almost advocating that it was effective for them to have diverse opinions, if I heard you right, and that then at the board level you would come to a collaborative decision. But the fact that there was different perspectives out there was good. Did I hear you right?
Well, it's about, to a certain degree, it's about managing expectations and trying to get the stakeholder groups aligned around an issue. And how do you do that? Sometimes it's difficult to do that. We had a good discussion about that in terms of the Association of Washington Cities. How do we, as board members who function as board members, but we're also wearing a different hat when it comes to representing different constituent groups, as employer representatives, as employee representatives?
So, Steve, do you need some clarification here?
No, I think it's this is helpful. So, one thing, for instance, that I might just touch bases on, it's not uncommon for stakeholder groups to have meetings outside the board meetings to talk about pension issues. So, and it's also not uncommon that sometimes they will say, "Hey, Steve, can we're getting together to have dinner with the president of Compass to talk about this issue. Would you be willing to come join us, and in case we have questions?" And I always say yes. And is that an okay thing? Not
Somebody's got to pay the bill, Steve.
Yeah, that's right. So far, that hasn't happened.
But, okay, I kind of thought that that was fair, but I thought this would be a good chance to kind of check in on that, especially since that same thing is happening tonight. I got one of those invitations, so the timing of it was like, oh yeah, man, this might be a good time to mention that.
In Steve's defense, though, at the same time, everything's dynamic. There's a lot of moving parts that are continually in motion. And for example, last session, the retiree hire, and we thought we had something that was somewhat agreed to at a time that either it was a misperception or more likely you had sentiments change during the course of something that was in progress already as a proposed piece of legislation, and groups either want minor modifications or if it was unable to be changed to disagree. When that happens, you'll have the groups all working behind the scenes, completely independent from the board, will approach and lobby independently here. And sometimes if you're at odds with each other, you don't present a unified front. Obviously, you accomplish that. The first thing that happens is we find out if there's a lot of different stakeholders within a given arena, field, profession kind of thing, and they come to us with dissimilar messages out there. There's so many things that actually you can act on, with some sort of a unity that you casually dismiss it. But it just, I think that what we ran into last time, maybe that was as a case study, was a basis for part of this question. it was something that was dynamic under your feet. We didn't understand it had changed until we were already engaged in the process.
Well, no, and it was a good thing. It was like, case study is perfect. And was there something that we, as a team, could have done different during session than what we did? That was part of it, is checking in to see how that kind of situation had come up really to that extent. How do we need to change the way we handle it? And it sounds, what I'm hearing is no. Those kind of differences are natural. It's not the you guys, it's not your responsibility to manage your organizations, and it's certainly not our responsibility to help align stakeholder groups, but serving as a subject matter resource for all the stakeholder groups is okay.
I do think it's important, though, is that when the board is taking action, that we've had enough conversation around the table so that it is better if we can get unanimous, or if there are those differences of opinions, at least we've vetted those, and so we know going in that either we're on the same page or we're not. And so then the board can weigh if it's worth it for the board to weigh in as a board, or if it's going to just, one of our own associations could be pushing that agenda, and that may just be a better way to do that. I think we as a board need to weigh in. When do we want to weigh in on a legislative fix that fits the board's needs for what our issues are? I think on this last one was a test case of just, it seemed like more information. It seems like it's not set in stone yet. It was kind of a more, I think we do better when we take our time to really understand all the different nuances of it. Like more issues are coming out on this one from the last year. So that's just something I kind of like, because I think it is useful when we go to the when we're asking the legislature to do something that, if we can be in alignment, it's always better for us. So.
All right, good. So Steve had mentioned earlier these first two topics he definitely was asking you guys to address, and then there's two other ones: benefit improvement and the funding ratio. Yeah. Was there, before we started, was there any other topic that you guys wanted to bring up in lieu of one of these? Maybe? No, doesn't sound like it. Okay.
No, these are pretty good.
All right. So then, listen. This may be. We'll just do it until you're done. We had 40 minutes in the first one, but there's going to be a change of some people. So on benefit improvement, it's going to be David, Jeff, Kevin, and Pat. And then on funding ratio, Kelly, Jack, Mark, and Wally. And so let's plan on by quarter after sharing your findings. Yeah. And I'll let you guys figure out how you change things.
We come to you, you come to us, we get new.
And if you want to share the issue and your findings and recommendations.
We actually went out of order on this. Went with number 3. If you don't put down your laptop there and put down your phone there, I'll do the same thing I did when I was on my phone and laptop over there and ignore you. I'm teasing you, Kelly.
I know you are.
We went.
I feel the love.
The orders are 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually,
that went away.
Yes, ma'am. We start with number 3 because 3 is kind of a foundational issue for everything else out there. Should strategic priorities for benefit improvements be adjusted? And we think that if we actually put these things in play at all, we do obviously every time we go through a strategic benefit analysis out there, we've pretty much been consistent with these. In the course of managing expectations, which is the end result of anything we do, any position we take, any question we ask out there, our expectations going to increase, be inflamed, be treated kind of thing by what we're doing. As part of managing expectations, if we can stay constant, leave that intact, that's a static foundation from which you operate. These are and have been our mission statement, the issue, the rules we actually operate by. That's good to have that static and keep that. So no, we shouldn't change those at all. Adjustment that we don't think is prudent. Then you go to question number 1, which goes for, should the board get updated costs from the state actuary for increasing the multiplier? About 5 years out, I think, for that, from actually having the last set. And of course, if we're discussing these issues with people, relying upon our foundation, strategic priorities out there, that you need to have current information so you can address truly the cost of something like this. So you explain to somebody, if you want to pay another 8 to 10% of your net pay, sure, we can provide this for you. That's one of those reality checks out there, that we have current information so we can have current discussions. We think that would be prudent. Should strategic priorities for benefit improvements? Number 2, should the board schedule a hearing to review historical analysis related to benefit improvements? We don't think there should be a separate hearing on this. What we'd like to do is we'd like to request the board to provide historical analysis in the course of a regular board meeting that we have here, so that we can have all the way from the very beginning show how we got from 58 to 55 to 53, how we actually started creating our own long-term benefits out there, including medical for people who are injured in the course of duty or totally disabled in the course of duty, and to actually show that over a period of time, it's a useful tool in a couple of different ways. This is rhetorical. Everybody knows this because you've been here 100 years. It's one of those things that everybody says, by God, the first 5 years we're here, you didn't give us anything. Where's our medical? Where's our 3%? This kind of thing. Until you actually start attaching numbers to them out there, and all of a sudden it's like, never mind. I don't want to pay half my paycheck for benefits. If we have a historical analysis that helps us say, look, we haven't been doing nothing. If you look aggregately over the last 10 years we have provided here, that's huge. So it'd be a good tool to have something like that presented, obviously, in open forum as a matter of record out there. And number 4, should the team be doing more to educate stakeholder groups about the board's priorities for benefit improvements, why those are priorities, and plan for achieving benefit improvements? That's, and Kevin, brought something up again about that, and everybody kind of stopped and gave pause to that. Every time we do this kind of thing, all of a sudden there's a generational effect, whether it's just hall talk, whether there's rumors, this kind of thing about, hey, wait a second, they're talking about this as a potential benefit improvement. We need to be very careful how we craft request for this information, present the information, so that we don't actually create that expectation up there or inflame current management expectations. The first 5 years were in existence. Everybody's punting us mercilessly. 2008 was pretty much a crisis, and obviously we remained fully funded and did really well in the face of everybody else actually having a problem with maintaining full funding. However, at the same time, we had a real benefit that happened from that, and that the managing expectations became fairly straightforward and simple. It's like everybody else is tanking. You guys are over 100%. You actually got your benefits intact. Your system's here. And everybody quietly says, yeah, we understand. That's a good thing. So the question is, how do we actually educate them without creating that expectation? The economy's back, care demands are back here, and trying to manage expectations at the same time we acquire this information. Questions? Damn, I made people's eyes.
Could you do that again?
Knock it off.
I was going to ask the question you just said. How do you do that?
This is something that David brought up. And there's no. It's
yeah.
You're good because you almost said me. There's something I missed.
Right.
The people that are on the board the last couple of years here, we miss. People have been around for a while. We forget the things that are foundational for us or fundamental for us that we actually are a part of. I don't know, you've been your judicial notice kind of thing. Don't exist for the people that are new here. He didn't know, and Kevin didn't know that we actually had member surveys out there. Was it 5 years ago, Steve? I think probably 5 when you started, 10 the last one or something like that. Plus or minus. We had surveys about if you have a benefit, which one did you approve, would you choose? Then we actually had cost assessments that they have for the fact to attach to those. We need something updated on that, so that when people come talk to us about these issues and show us how we're going to accomplish this, to show them that this would actually be the cost of the member. Sometimes it's a reality check, and they go, no thanks. We're talking 5-10% of their net income, you know, going to go into a hole for something like this. Sometimes they're unobtainium, like the medical, which is like the, you know, the phoenix, or this is a unicorn kind of thing at this point. Here, with the, you know, the unknown cost drivers that are out there in front of us, with everything else in play, that ain't going to happen. You talk about the money you have to put up front for that. I mean, it's just that they help you manage expectations, but sometimes they help you refine what expectations are somewhat within reach distance, somewhat obtainable over a period of time. What we have to do to obtain that like that thing. So to have an updated analysis would also help.
But having an updated analysis also helps to redefine and reassess the objective for the goal of providing benefit improvements.
Yes.
And, you know, it's just another way of reassessing to address that, you know, objectives to meet the goal.
So overall, we need updated information.
Comments from this table?
I agree with everything he said.
You agree with everything he said?
Everything he said.
Jack, you agree?
Yeah, I think so.
You know, with that tie
Oh, we
on,
follow Jeff's
kinda-
lead, because he confuses
You're
when he
killing me.
talks.
I heard that. You're killing me.
Kelly and Laurie, you guys both on the same page?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're
Any clarifying questions, Steve?
Yeah, if it's okay with Wally, I'd kind of like to talk a little bit, another real-life example from the most recent WACOPS general meeting. Typically, I'll go there and I'll make a presentation about what the board is working on, and then turn it open to questions. And there was a lot of questions about when are we going to get a significant benefit improvement.
Yeah, Wally.
And particularly,
That's his problem.
no, Wally gave me a heads up before I got up there, so I wasn't surprised by it, and it gave me a chance to prepare for it because, and it was related to the multiplier. They want a multiplier increase, and so partly because Wally had given me a heads up, I was able to go back and look at the fiscal notes when we had done the pricing on it, and it was old, but at least I had numbers that came from the actuary. And if you refer to the strategic plans, one of the expectations that you guys had laid out in the past was educate the plan members about the difference between fiscal realities and desired benefit improvements. And I kind of jokingly said, that could have been the topic of my presentation to WACOPS. Here is the difference between fiscal realities and desired benefit improvements. Now, so, and it was uncomfortable in a sense of, there was a lot of there was a lot of interest from the members, and I was delivering unwelcome, perhaps, news. But there was no discomfort on my part because I knew from the strategic plan that's clearly one of your expectations. Educate them about the difference between fiscal realities and desired benefit improvements. Couldn't be any clearer. And so I didn't feel any discomfort in that sense. This question is a way of kind of checking in on that point. Did have numbers that were a little bit out of date, and so it's like, all right, do we want to make OSA go back and kind of go through the work? Is it worthwhile to have them kind of update those numbers? Could be helpful if there's going to be more of these discussions, but in particular, I wanted to make sure that I was still on the same page with you guys on that point. Because I suspect that WACOPS will be just the first of, anytime, the other group, I don't want to, they're dealing with this kind of the same issue, that funding status of the plant's relatively healthy. And one of the things that typically comes along with that is pressure to increase benefits. So that was kind of timely in the sense that those questions came out of walk-offs. That was part of, so your feedback on this was dead on helpful for us in terms of kind of how do we prepare for these meetings going forward, whether or not, and at least making sure my comfort level that I'm still carrying out your expectations when I deliver what may be unwelcome news. The only other thing is that it reminded me, that was a while ago. Time flies, but a lot of that work was done by the board back in 2005 and 2006. So, for instance, when I mentioned during one of my questions that the consensus was that at some point in time in the future, if there was going to be a big benefit improvement, it would be the multiplier, because that applied to everybody. And that the kind of the rough idea was that we'd look at finding a way to get people with a 25-year career a 60% multiplier. The walk-offs leadership did not remember that at all. In fact, they were quick to point out that they had a resolution at a prior conference that the desired benefit improvement was a 2.5% multiplier, not this other one. So it's kind of like, maybe, yeah, I lose track of these things. It has been a while. Leadership's changed there. Board members that I have are different from when they were back in 2005. So checking back and making sure, I don't know if you guys even want to spend any time, in that kind of what-if scenario. If things were better 10 years from now, could we kind of design or, because it's like, I didn't want to go through it with walk-offs there about all the different reasons why the board 8 years ago preferred a 60% at 25 over a 2.5% multiplier, and the analysis that went into that. But it's kind of like, if you guys are getting any kind of pressure, and that's the kind of stuff that might be helpful for you in answering these questions, then that's something that we could do. And that maybe fit in with your suggestion about sort of the history of benefit improvements.
Right.
Is maybe to some extent, if you feel like it would be helpful, a refresher about how that 60% at 25 years sort of, how that sort of bubbled to the top of all the other 40 improvements that were considered and studied. Is that something that would be helpful?
I think it's always helpful, Steve.
Yeah. One man's opinion on that, but if we're working with old information and people are aware that the economy is sort of recovered and maybe there's a little bit of resurgence in expectations again, because now we're out of the slump, that it would be nice to have new information and a new set of talking points, for lack of anything better, so that everybody's on the same page when it comes to addressing these issues, no matter who the group is.
Okay.
One thing also I want to put in here is that I haven't heard that as succinctly as you just said, is that a board's position was trying to get to 60% for 25 years of service. I don't have that in my history that's what the board at least previously thought, or that's still our board. And so one idea I really do want to talk about, because this one is near and dear to me, is being very clear of the list of benefits that we are interested as a board of looking at, researching, and prioritizing those. And so that when we come to board meetings, that, okay, this next year we're going to focus on the multiplier. I don't know. Maybe that's the highest priority one. Maybe it's medical benefit. I don't know what it is. But let's do the cost, let's get the research, let's do it. And just keep that in front of us, because there's a lot of history here that really, we said, well, of course it's our number one priority, benefits, but I went back to I went back to our founding documents, and benefits are just anything above what we currently have. So there's no quick list or reference for me to say, gosh, these were the highest priorities, and it also doesn't talk about, to the members, these are the things that we did in the first few years. A lot of it was disability, a lot of the other ones, and we checked those off. And we've done those now. We have another 15, and of those 15, which are the highest priorities we're going to focus on? Because we're probably, when you come back to the tactics and how are we meeting those goals, we're going to be able to say, yeah, we spent all of 15 looking at that issue, and we chose to do this or not. Then you can come back.
Yeah. Now, and one of the things, just to clarify, one of the things that I kind of heard, one of the questions was, have your priorities changed in the sense of your priorities as of like 4 years ago, we're looking at low cost, no cost type benefit improvements. And I'm hearing that is still sort of the focus.
It is because it has to be. I mean, we're in an economic environment that none of us would have probably predicted when we created this board. I think we thought, managing the plan responsibly and with the financial integrity of the plan, that we would be in a position to be able to look at improvements.
I guess you should have said short-term priorities.
Yeah.
Priorities for the next 4 years. But yeah.
Well, Kelly, I mean, here's kind of maybe a different approach towards that, though. In consideration of everything we have in front of us just in this coming biennium, the fact that we're overfunded like this also is, at the same time, it's an advantage. Best funded system in the country, perfect. We're also low-hanging fruit because of that. And there's a lot of things could happen. They might try some sort of mishmash and cram the systems together again. They might, somebody can pull out 50 million. There might be one of a dozen different options. Would it be prudent as a, and I don't know what the proper terminology would be, as a defensive position, maybe to look at some sort of a benefit at this point here, so to get us back closer to 100% out there, so that we actually are not such low-hanging fruit out there, that the liabilities are consistent with the resources we have available? Maybe that should be part of the conversation.
That is a perfect segue into the next group.
I was just going to say that.
That was exactly the question.
Steve, do you mind?
Well, I didn't see
do you
that.
mind if we use our process instead of you? That is the perfect segue. I was going to use that term as well.
Damn, I should have read ahead.
It's like you
Should have gone to UW, I guess.
It looks pretty clear.
All right. I'll answer the questions first, then we'll get into that conversation. We said that we would not change the way we look at the funding ratio now, or the strategic goals related to maintaining the financial integrity of the plan or improving plan benefits based on that current funding. We believe that we should continue our strategy or philosophy of de-risking the plan, being prepared for market volatility. Now, so on that subject, we were having some conversations here about, are we still realizing losses from the Great Recession? The fact is that we are. You have a plan that has about $6.6 billion of market value. So just to stay even, you have to earn $500 million a year. That's 7.5% of 6.6 billion, excuse me. So anything less than 500 million, you're not moving forward, you're moving backward. That's where we are in today's economic environment with our plan. Jeff?
What percentage of that is contributions versus return on investment? It's all.
I don't have that number, but usually, I think we've looked at it. It's 84% of our plan is based on returns.
Right.
84% of that 6.6 has been returns.
Historically, going forward, you could expect it to be about 75. About 25% contributions, 75.
Got it.
roughly.
Okay. So, in that conversation, you have to do better then, and you can look at at our website. You have the actuarial valuation that's provided by the Office of the State Actuary. It's in there. David, when I was listening to some of your comments, a lot of that stuff you have to kind of, and it takes time to read through those things. A lot of time. It's something that weird people. I'm not as weird as Steve Nelson about these things, but I enjoy reading those things and learning about those. So, and it was actually a surprise to me that we still have about $600 million in losses out there. Just from 2012, we only earned 1.4%, 1.45 through the State Investment Board. So we went backwards $390 million from our target of 7.5% a year. We've had some good years too, but so when we look at that, that's why we think, because of that kind of volatility, we want to continue, even though this number would appear to be low-hanging fruit, what does 15% of that represent? You couldn't buy a benefit long-term with those amounts of money. You need to find different ways, and I think it was outlined in here. Maybe it was on the document you guys were operating off of with alternate revenue and the things that we tried to, measures we tried to employ. And we had a conversation at our table about it was not a one big $500 million that we need to create and get the legislature to contribute. It's an aggregated method of bringing little things, alternate revenue, maybe some other actuarial assumptions could be modified with the research and the support of the state actuary's office, that we could maybe create that 250 million, 500 million, if you aggregated all those actuarial modifications, I guess. Fair enough? So then the second question was, should the board take action to educate the stakeholders and the legislature regarding the board's strategic goals and policy decisions in support of those goals? And I think our first reaction was no and no. But the more we talked about it, we said, yes to stakeholders. We felt like that's essential, and that's something that seems to be a recurring theme every time we talk about any one of these work sessions is stakeholder communications, meaning education and more preparedness. And then the other part was to the legislature, and in the conversation we had here, you think about legislator, you think about Jeff, you think about Kevin, you think about Senator Brown, and those are only a small piece, and people that don't have probably the appropriate level of time to really delve into these issues. It's legislature, meaning in a kind of a holistic, staff members, caucus staff, nonpartisan staff. It's those folks that we need to reach out to, and that I know that Steve does that now quite a bit. It's a lot of responsibility on him, particularly when we have active legislation, to have that communication. So we said to the legislature, you got to know the audience and know that even at a select committee or even at this level, Jeff's been here a long time, but Senator Brown is probably very inexperienced, I guess, is not to be critical, but she doesn't probably have a good background in all these issues. Yet she's the conduit back to her particular caucus and to the Senate on our issues. So we ended up saying yes to both of those things, that we do need to have that outreach and communication with those groups. That's it.
Well, just a comment on because I've been here 9 years. I mean, you end up with in the trustees masters and the cap and all the rest of the stuff and all the issues we've gone through here. It's amazing because the understanding I have is probably, but just like you get on SCPP and it's like the people here really, there's not much depth to them. And I'm not trash talking. I mean, there just really isn't. And so the challenge becomes in the legislature and understanding and appreciating the fact that due to the volume and the diversity of topics presented to you, that the knowledge base is 3 miles wide and 1 inch deep. They hear about a lot of stuff and they know just a little tiny bit about each. A lot of times a lobbyist or a stakeholder group will bring to them not much else, nothing in context. Is how do we frame this at a 4th grade level in 90 seconds with an emotional punch? How do we get out in front of us and frame the issue, saying that the overfunding is something here that is a nominal measurement, that is no way indicative of excess funding in the system. Do something out there to address the potential target we make of ourselves, because they will listen to somebody say they're 123% funded out there, and that's what will stick with them. I mean, a simple one-dimensional answer. At the 4th grade level, they take that run to the bank with it. We got to do something. You use that money more appropriately elsewhere. This kind of thing. So we've got an issue of I don't want to say dumbing down, but to simplifying something like this, so that again, in a defensive position from the board's perspective.
I can't answer, off the top of my head here, but as we were sitting here having this conversation, I was thinking about what would it take to go from 115 to 100%? It would take, one bad market year, right, and then combined with a lowering of contribution rates. Right. You could probably accomplish that in 1 or 2 years and have it be gone. And then it's gone forever. Moving forward, you can't make it up again. Which was ultimately for those stakeholder groups that were involved in the 2008-2009 sessions, what we were able to do that. It probably wasn't at a 4th grade level. It wasn't a quick punch, but we did accomplish that ultimately, showing them what the ramifications are of underfunding now, what that would cost in the future. And it did not look like this. No. It was like everything was going uphill. This is a good 4th grade level thing right here.
Yeah. Amen, brother. Straight.
That one, I think that the board is aligned across all the groups on that stability of financing and keeping it. And so I want to make sure that if we are vulnerable, let's say, having a number that shows 115 or 120, how do we respond to that? Because I think that's prudent. When we first started out, the best funded pension system in the country, then on the flip side, it's like, well, then there's just too much, and then we just grab that. Well, you just take the 15%, get down to 100, and call it good. I think you're exactly. That should be our concern, because we have the 20, 30-year focus of the system, right, not this year's.
That's the one thing that we were able to convey. This is just 115 just represents a snapshot in time. Mm-hmm. It will be different a year from now. It will be different 5 years from now.
All you need to really do is compare that chart with the PERS rates. Mm-hmm. The legislature's manipulated the PERS rates so that they're going to climb dramatically over the next 10 years. Just a picture. Sometimes that's what people need to see, and you look at that steady, stable rate and then show them where the PERS rates are going to go, and you're going to be spending a lot of money because you weren't prudent in the way that you managed those rates in the plan in the past.
I'm thinking, listening to this, it's erring on the conservative side, right? And I think just like David was saying, gee, there's money there, gee, we should take advantage of it. And but the argument obviously is you want to err on the conservative side, which you guys are with all that money and all the stakeholders. So I could think of a lot of little books that they have that are out there that are. One of my customers has a book because they build wind turbines, and they do it for grade school people. So how does the wind generate energy? It's about 15 pages of this little story. And anyway, I'm not suggesting that, but there is a way to. It helped me understand how the wind turbines worked and so forth, and it was a fun little story, right? So what is a story that all ages can understand that causes you to have this long-term perspective versus this short-term grab, right? And because there's a lot of different stakeholders that need to understand this deeper than the inch, right?
Yeah. You guys have been remarkably successful on a number of different fronts in holding the line on funding. One of the reasons I get asked all the time, next week I'll be doing a presentation to a national organization on pensions, and they're going to talk to me about how did you do it, and what are the challenges that come with being 115% funded? Yes, there are some. The National Association of State Retirement Administrators was there earlier this year. That question came up, and they said, you know who we need to ask? The guy's from Washington. He's in the audience. You want to talk to him about challenges from being over 100% funded? There's the guy. In fact, that may be on their agenda next year. One of the things that I always point back to is that you are the only plan, to my knowledge, where not just the employer reps who understand it from a budget perspective, the benefit of rate stability and having lack of variance in your expenditures, but from the member perspective, as the State Council of Firefighters in the state of Washington is going in and lobbying the legislature, and they're telling them their number one priority, out of all their priorities, their number one priority is full funding of the pension plan. How many of you can say that same thing with your public safety plans? That's what I'm talking to next week. I can tell you, none. Because their members haven't kind of understood the way you guys have been able to understand the importance of that. Part of that is you pay half the cost too. So a lot of variance in the contribution rates affects your kitchen table budget just as much as it does the budget of the city of Tacloba. But also part of it is understanding that way back when the board was first formed, for instance, I know several of you came to me and said, this is what the legislature's doing with rates. And they're telling us we don't need to worry about it because our benefits are guaranteed. So what do we care? Why should we care about our rates? Because your benefits are guaranteed. In fact, it's free money to you. You get less money out of your paycheck and your benefits are still guaranteed. Steve, we know they're lying. You tell us how. And it was not so much that they were lying. I think for the most part,
you must have just remembered you're being recorded.
It was more of a not a full understanding themselves, either of your priorities or of the consequence. Because once we got them to understand that there is no free money, if you spend this money now, whether you spend it on benefit improvements or whether you spend it on rate reductions, if you spend it now, essentially you're borrowing. On rate reductions. You lower the rate now, you get a little money now, and you get higher rates in the future, and you pay it back with interest at 7.5. So you, legislature, if you are looking to borrow money at 7.5 or 8% interest, that's essentially what you're doing. And that was how we were able to get it down to that sort of that 6th grade level that you were talking about, Jeff. And get them to, it's being recorded, so I bumped it up from 4th grade to 6th grade.
Thought you were just doing your thing with numbers again.
But that was one way. But it is very challenging, and in some cases it's not so much education as it is persuasion. I know, for instance, a lot of those lobbying efforts in 2000, Telly mentioned the 2008-9 market crash, and the legislature coming in and saying we're going to lower rates in 2010. And we had the charts to show, you're kidding, we just lost over $1 billion in investment returns, and now you want to lower rates too. Here's what that's going to do to rates in the future. And the thing, we don't care. We understand what we're doing. We just don't care because times are desperate. And we're going to do it anyway. And so at that time, it was less education and more persuasion, and the hits in that case were probably more, they weren't emotional hits, they were more, that's not something we're going to agree with under any circumstances. And you, as a collective body, again, this is one where you all have been in unanimity on for 10 plus years, stood the ground. I was kind of curious. Would the employers also feel that same urgency at the local government level that they did at the state government level of, yeah, we know this is bad, but everything's bad right now. Maybe this is the least bad. I don't know. No. I think, in fact, David had us invited to do a presentation kind of after the fact of what happened in LEOFF and what happened in PERS and how those were different and why. And they and the city managers that were there, King County city managers, understood. And this approach looks a lot better for us. And yes, it tests your short-term resolve in those instances where there's a lot of pressure, but you can see the long-term benefits. And talking to budget managers, particularly at the local government level, for some reason they seem to be much better long-term planners, maybe, than some of the budget folks at the state level, both in the OFM and in the legislature. It seems to be a little bit more of a short-term focus sometimes in the legislature, and so that's a challenge. For us going forward, the team, that's part of it. It's one thing to say, yeah, we've got a little bit of money. We know that's going to make us a target. We expect, given the budget situation, that challenges are going to come, and in fact, it's no surprise. I've heard from House and Senate and Governor's office that, given the budget constraints for this upcoming session, don't count on your rates being fully funded. So that is the kind of challenge that you guys are up against. And to go in and say, well, our plan is just leave it alone, is too soft. Having you guys discuss so that you're in agreement, yeah, that is our plan, but here's why it's our plan. It's not just that we're doing it because we're lazy or we didn't give it any thought, or it is intentional. We want that money there for the next downturn. To your credit, not at the 4th grade level or the 6th grade level, but at the PhD level, there's a book written by Alicia Monell, PhD in pensions. And one of the things she said on funding state and local pension benefits in her next book is she argued to get rid of DB plans and replace them with DC plans. And one of the main reasons why is, she said, plan sponsors of DB plans don't know how to deal with surpluses. Every time there's a surplus, lower rates, improved benefits, maybe both. They don't have the knowledge or the fortitude in those situations to leave it alone. And so kudos to you that when faced with that kind of question, you guys got to the PhD answer in an hour. And that will be a challenge. It's something that, honestly, from my perspective, I expect to spend the bulk of my time on in session next year, this next session. I imagine you haven't voted as a board on any benefit or legislative recommendations yet. Obviously, depending on your votes in December, there may be some other things that I'm working on this session as well. But given the importance of this issue to the plan and the likelihood that it's going to be challenged, that's short-term crystal ball, if you will. And it's been one of the concerns that I've shared with all the stakeholder groups that I talked to and leading up to this session. It's rates at the top of the list. So,
Do you want to do a wrap up on the other three real quick, or do you need a couple minutes?
Mr. President, would you guys want a? Do you want a
Hey, Steve, without objection, a comment from the audience?
Oh.
First off, thanks for allowing me to be here. I got to say, Steve is outstanding in his analysis. He's right on point. One thing I'd like to remind you guys of, from a Left One perspective, I was fortunate enough and honored to be in the very first of the left in the state of Washington. Left One. I was one of eight in Seattle, one of 18 in Seattle, and the last of the old city pension system. We went from a system that was in the black, that was a city retirement system, which was a pretty good system, into the red when they created Left. And you guys have done an outstanding job representing your membership. If we would have had a Left 2 board back then, maybe we could have negated all of the stuff that happened. But remember that the one thing that I think you can use, and maybe do some analysis, is the state, the legislators never funded Left 1 properly. And as you all know, that's what happened to Left 2. And they keep putting the focus or the blame onto the Left 1 firefighters and police officers. They had nothing to do with it. There was some pension abuse that they should have tightened up, and they didn't. And the legislatures used that as an excuse to create Left 2. But what I'm saying is, I think that even though there's a surplus, that surplus has to be there for the future. And I think if you point out, look what you did in the early 6 years with Left 1, you never funded it until that 6th or 7th year. And we were always under the threat as young firefighters and police officers of losing that pension. Every year the legislature from 1970 on threatened to take it away from us. And remember, Seattle was not booming back in those days. You know, Boeing has turned out the lights, and they had all these economic problems. So, when I'm listening to this, I'm hearing some similarities, and I think that where you guys are right on point is this surplus is not something that you can spend. You're looking for the future, and that's why I think you guys are such a bold board, that you're looking to the future.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay. If you guys want a quick 5-minute, 10-minute break, that's fine. Otherwise, what we do is just jump right into sort of the wrap-up. That's sort of your choice. And just finish it up.
Let's just go, Stephen.
All right. Kind of 4 things that I've heard that I wanted to these are big picture things. One I just talked about. That as far as what to do with the funding ratio, nothing. It's there to insulate us from the next downturn, and it provides us protection, and it provides us the stability. So, with respect to that, nothing. With respect to benefit improvements, no change in the short-term strategic focus of promoting benefit improvements that are either low cost or no cost. But it's time to go back and revisit some of the history, and at the very least, update the numbers on some of the more expensive benefit improvements, if for no other reason than to help out in the discussions that are likely to come up about those benefit improvements. Keep in mind, not to create any expectations out there amongst the plan members that a benefit improvement is anticipated, particularly in the short term. With respect to the first 2, board turnover, there are a couple of things that we could be doing as far as communicating with the organizations, making sure they know when there's vacancies or as vacancies are coming up, even if it's just checking in with the reps on the boards, like Candace or board members themselves. But we're not out promoting or suggesting or recruiting individual board members. On the final issue was
Alignment.
Which one?
Alignment.
Oh, the alignment. How you guys get along once you go your separate ways from a board meeting, that's up to you. And we can be a resource on some of these issues in terms of questions about cost or whatever it is, but factual data resource. But it's not the responsibility of you or of us to go out and try to help you get into alignment outside of the board meeting process. Now that's kind of high level. I didn't want to go into a ton of detail, but that's sort of some of the takeaway. That's the big takeaways from the four that you mentioned. And if there's anything about that sounds wrong, let me know. If there's more detail, I've got pages of notes, and I think everybody on the team has been taking notes. All of this has been captured as well and recorded as well, so I don't want you to feel like if I didn't mention something more detailed, like communicating to the governor's office that we're not particularly, about having only 2 terms, that somehow was missed, that those kind of things were missed just because I didn't mention them. Any concerns with those takeaways as I expressed them? I cannot tell you how much I personally appreciate, but also us, getting expectations from you guys is what we need in order to do our jobs in between board meetings and during session. When things come up like the Law Cops meeting, I don't have to wonder, oh God, what should I do? What does my board expect me to do? I am very fortunate, our team is very fortunate, that you have been very clear in your expectations to us. And I appreciate you taking the time, not only the traveling here, but the way you engaged. We were all commenting on it throughout the meeting. Your level of engagement, the types of discussion that you were having, the way you participated was, even for these workshops, the best that we've seen so far. And I can see, one of the things we've talked about is doing some kind of workshop as opposed to presentation, and we may try to incorporate this format into something next interim outside of just strategic planning. And kind of, the better you guys get, the more we keep pushing you. But you did a great job today. You did a great job today, and we appreciate it. So, thank you. In your materials, we've got a couple of quick takeaways. You don't take action on it today, but there is a calendar with the proposed meeting dates for next year. We'll talk about that at the next meeting. It's just there so that you can start looking at it and comparing it with your personal calendars. And then the final thing is there is a meeting feedback form evaluation. You're finishing up early, so we would appreciate it if you would lose a minute or two of that extra time to fill out your feedback.
It helps the score too, Steve, that you're getting us out early.
Come on, I'll let you guys get to that, and again, thank you.